Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm giving the 2-minute warning. We're just going to give everybody who's going to be joining 2 minutes, and we'll be starting at 2:32. Okay, and there we have it. Welcome to the 7th installment of the Eklund Gomes Black Lives Matter series. In this 7th installment, we are really coming to the culmination of our series. Today, we're going to be talking about implementation of the solutions that we came to as a group last week. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. For those of you who have been with us throughout the series, welcome back. Just to give a brief review of what we have done so far, we basically began the process trying to give an introduction to the Black Lives Matter movement. From there, we moved into a historical perspective where we talked about the history of Black lives in America that goes pre-Civil War, or pre-civil rights actually, and then post-civil rights. From there, we went into talk about living while Black, the human stories. We then identified racism in real estate, as we know that it does exist. From there, we went on to coming up with some solutions, and that was last week. And then this week, we're going to talk about implementing some of those solutions. I will say that this is a bit bittersweet for me, and I know many of my committee members that have been working with me for the past 7 weeks. This is ultimately the end of our series as you know it. That being said, I don't think that this is the end of our movement. As I said before, I don't think that this is a moment in time. Rather, I do think that it is the movement of our times. And I can tell you on an earlier call that I did have with the committee, we here at Eklund Gomes on this Black Lives Matter committee are going to remain committed to what we have been discussing with all of you for the past 7 weeks. We have all learned a lot. We feel a tremendous sense of responsibility. We feel as though we are the gatekeepers for this topic. We are the gatekeepers for the fair housing laws. We are gatekeepers as real estate brokers in general. However, we on this committee have made it our duty, and it is an honor, by the way, but it is our duty to really uphold those standards and those laws. As you know, last week, it was announced that Governor Cuomo did sign into law that real estate brokers will now be getting their licenses revoked should they be found engaging in any discriminatory practices. We all take this stuff really seriously, guys, and I'm so glad that you guys are joining us, and I'm so glad that you're participating and that you share the same level of interest. As I said, this is, you know, the movement of our times. It is not a moment. We are not going away until this racism that is in our industry goes away. So we'll be coming up with some implementation to our solutions today. I think that there are some good things that will come out of this conversation. We are very, very interested in your input as always. As far as the format of this hour, this is going to be a roundtable discussion. For those of you who are back, you'll remember that if you touch your screens on the top right-hand corner where you see those three dots, you can touch the top of the screen, touch the dots, you'll be able to see a raise your hand button. When you raise your hand, you will then be telling Ellis, who is here on the screen with us on the committee, that you would like to engage in the conversation and share something. Again, we're going to talk about these solutions. We're going to pose questions about how to implement some of these solutions. It is not for us on the committee to do on our own. We really, truly, and genuinely are looking for your input and ultimately the buy-in from the entire group as a whole. I just want to mention as a programming note here that we did originally plan to next week have a final session, an 8th session or episode in this series. However, as things continue to evolve with the coronavirus that is affecting all of us in America, some areas quite deeply, with all of the travel bans and all of the quarantines, the committee has decided that it is not safe for us personally to travel to Washington for the Black Lives Matter march. We have also spoken to a number of our friends and family and colleagues that are equally as disappointed as we are that we are not going to be able to participate. It's just not safe enough for us to actually to do that, and we don't want to harm any of you. That being said, there will be a virtual march on the same day that is hosted by the NAACP, and we will be providing you with all of those details. We will very much be a part of that, and we strongly urge all of you to be a part of that as well. Can't hear you, audio disconnected. Can everybody hear me? Susie, can you confirm that you can hear me? I'm reading a comment there.
I hear you.
You hear me, okay, great. So for those who couldn't hear me, what I was saying is that we will not be attending the Black Lives Matter March in Washington, but we will be sending the details for a virtual Black Lives Matter march that will happen, that's hosted by the NAACP, that was happening at the same time that the march in Washington will be happening. So there will not be a final session next week that we're gonna host, because that was gonna be our preparation for that march. It is no longer necessary for us to do that. That being said, and without further ado, I'd like to get into today's topic. Again, as I said, today is all about how do we implement the change based on those solutions that came through last week. I'm going to start out here by talking about one of the solutions that I came up with that was inspired by something that one of the people that are, one of you guys that are out there listening and joining in our roundtable discussion. I was inspired to think we have to do something about people who hear things and see things that are afraid to say something in the moment. So you might be a real estate broker out there who witnesses racism or discrimination of some kind. You may be a real estate broker who experiences another colleague within the industry that perhaps is steering. You may come across these incidences and you might be afraid to actually say something or do something. So I came up with the idea to have a hotline, an 888 or an 800 number, so that anybody out there working in our industry that experiences anything that they think is racist, that they could report that to by simply calling this 1-800 number. So I'm just wondering what all of you out there think about something like this. And most importantly, if you think that it's something that's positive and that would be useful or helpful, how do you think we could implement this? So let's just say there's an 800 number. Great. I'll pay for that 800 number. I'll sponsor it. People are going to call in. They're going to leave a message. Then what? What do we do here on this committee? What do we do about all of those messages and that information that we receive? We're obviously not the, Department of State. We don't work at the governor's office. How do you guys propose that we would implement this solution? I do think it's a good solution, but I just wonder if anybody has any ideas ultimately on how we would implement that. And if you do have such an idea of how you would like to implement that, now would be a good time to raise your hand so that Ellis can then identify you and give you the floor to speak. And Ellis, you'll let us know if anybody is raising their hand. And if nobody raises their hand, I guess I can give it some thought and kind of continue the discussion. I suppose, and I thought about this a little bit deeper, if you do have an 800 number and somebody does call to file a complaint, I was thinking could be as simple as me calling the governor's office in advance while we're setting up the 800 number and saying that we are in full support of, revoking people's licenses if there are discriminatory practices that are happening out there within our industry, because we must end them. We just must put an end. And the best way to do that is to, give examples. And then people will understand that this is a law and it is serious. So maybe we can come up with a contact in the governor's office and let them know that we are paying out of our own money to have a hotline number so that people can make these reports. And I want to know who I can submit these reports to. It seems like, I am not the law, but, I am a law-abiding citizen and I am working in this industry and I want to uphold the laws of this industry and protect people, all people. So I think that it could be as simple as that. It almost seems like it's too simple to be true because it just seems so simple that I'm surprised that it hasn't been being done. But I think that's how I want to implement it. This was my idea. I think that that's a good way to implement it. Unless anybody else thinks that they have a better idea, you don't have to come up with your idea now. You know that you can always communicate with us. Our information is all over the website. You can contact me directly. You can call me. You can text me. You can email me with your ideas. But for now, I'm going to table that discussion. Ellis will just put down my implementation to the solution, and we'll move on to the next solution.
Hey, John, I think we have like 2 hands raised.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize.
Christopher Franklin.
Sure. Hi. Thanks. Hi, I'm Chris. John, thank you so much, first off, for your leadership on this issue and in our industry. Grateful to be here with you. One thing that, generally speaking, there is normally an inspector general's office at state, and they may already have procedures for this in place. So when you reach out, that might be a good first place to actually reach out to the inspector general. They may already have a system in place where that 1-800 number where you could forward it to. That's all I wanted to say, and thank you.
That's amazing, and thank you for that. We will note that. And by the way, if this is something that is already being done, then I think that that's even more wonderful because it's even easier. What I would like to do then is I would like to start promoting that number. I would like to use our platform to make people aware, because I know that I myself, who are deeply invested in this issue, as you know, I don't know of such a hotline number. But if there is, I think that would be amazing. I want to promote the hell out of it. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that suggestion.
That's good.
Hey,
No?
I was just gonna say, this is Heather. Hi guys.
Hi, Heather.
I was just gonna say, I know when I worked on the standard and procedures at the board in Los Angeles, we had, like, when we would start something new, like we started doing more enforcement of like protecting the public interest with what goes on postcards. And we had like a system of like, you would first like get coaching if you did something wrong, and that, so that maybe there's a way to look at the code of ethics and make sure the language for anti-racism is aggressive in the different boards' code of ethics, so that we could do self-policing through the boards.
Yes, I think that that's a good idea as well. And thank you, Heather. And hi, I miss you.
Miss you too.
I forget sometimes that this is a national conversation. Unfortunately, racism is like,
It's
you know,
everywhere,
raging
yeah.
from coast to coast. So, and I guess I was so focused on the New York State law ultimately, and I don't think that you guys do have such a law. Correct me if I'm wrong, Heather.
I'm not sure.
Been implemented where real estate brokers can have their licenses revoked for such discriminatory practices. Is that maybe something that we should be discussing with, you know, local people in government in
Yeah, we
California?
should look into it for
It's
sure.
something we could also look into, and, you know, maybe just, you know, using New York State as an example. I was really thrilled when Governor Cuomo did this. So, but yes, thank you for that recommendation as well. Noted. So we will get on that. I'm so excited that you guys like that idea as well. I am going to, unless there was anybody else that wanted to comment on that, Ellis, we're going to move on to Charlie. And Charlie, you'll have to unmute yourself.
That was
There you
working on
go.
it. Got it. Gotta love Zoom.
Charlie's
So
going to
first-
talk about our next next solution that we came up with, and we'll all sort of chime in on a way to implement.
So the next solution was sort of two-part. It's bringing in speakers to educate on anti-racism and diversity and inclusion training and trainers. So I have a few ideas on how we can implement this, but does anyone out there in the audience have any ideas before I come up with my own?
So Charlie, can you break it down one at a time? Because I got confused when you mentioned the two. I was just, what's the first one?
So the speakers to educate on anti-racism, you know, Black and POC people coming in, maybe school professors to address culture and questions, and other options would be like Black and POC business coaches that could help to expose harmful policies and hidden biases gently and more easily than a peer or individual could sometimes see. There could be more options of obviously other speakers that could come in as well. And then there's diversity and inclusion trainers that, you know, firms could bring in, or even on a deeper level that teams could bring in. And, you know, the team leaders ultimately make the choices, and the team leaders make a concerted effort to bring in these people and get their unique perspectives and fresh ideas and tools the team can use. You know, teams obviously flourish and enliven when you have a diverse personnel and inclusive environment. And, you know, when you have these conversations, you provide a level of equity for everyone. So those were my ideas on how to bring it in and how to implement it. And wondering if anyone else has any ideas on kind of speakers to bring in and what sort of diversity and inclusion training could be lacking.
And Ellis, you'll let us know when anybody out there raises their hand if they'd like to talk about a way to implement that.
I will let you know.
In the meantime, while we're waiting for people to raise their hand, I'm thinking about a way to implement it. And it really kind of warms my heart because, as I said, this is bittersweet that we're having our last episode today. And I think we all talked about that as a committee earlier. But how about this? I want to continue this somehow because I don't want people to forget about this Black Lives Matter movement that we're in. I'm thinking we do at Eklund Gomes sponsor every now and again speakers to come in, and we can invite people from every firm, every real estate broker, and host them at our beautiful 936 Broadway flagship office when we can all start getting back together again. Or even having smaller intimate groups and socially distancing here, or having those people speak on these Zoom meetings until we can actually meet again. I think that that would be a wonderful way to sort of keep the spirit of the Black Lives movement, movement alive and to continue the conversation. Because I think it's really, really important that we gently remind everyone out there that this is an issue, that we still have to tackle this issue, that we're going to keep talking about it until it is no longer an issue. So that's one way that I think we could implement it.
And also probably involving ourselves with like the New York Real Estate Institute and all the other schools where agents' career path starts. It starts with going to the classes, and we're most engaged and optimistic when we are, baby agents. We're getting all the knowledge, and I know that in my classes, it kind of skimmed over. So, I think that starting at that base level would be a good idea.
Or having one of us go to those classes and speak to them so they can see someone of their own there representing them and saying, okay, these are the issues and we're going to be here for you if any questions, kind of keeping them involved and taking care of, having someone have a voice for you.
Yeah.
And not only that, from the perspective of, one of your own, but also you might be a person who is not of color. And it's good for you to know as well. This is something that you have to deal with, and you might want to think twice about your actions. If you're coming in here with your own biases toward racism, you better just know now that we don't accept that, and that, we are here and we are working in this industry, and you're trying to come into an industry where we are working all collectively together. So, be on your toes, because we'll be on the lookout.
I just want to quickly jump into Charlie's point with respect to diversity and inclusion training. I think what's critical is that it must be consistent, and it must be embedded in and essentially baked into the curriculum, if you will. For example, we're constantly doing deals, right? With the time you typically learn about these issues and how not to do certain things is at the outset of your career. And, I know they make you do continuing ed every 2 years. But the reality is, I think it really needs to be implemented in every team meeting that a manager is conducting with a team of agents. I mean, the reality is there needs to be a constant reminder and a constant conversation with respect to this, because otherwise it's all in vain. That's kind of what I think about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that one, Stephen. Good point. So Charlie, did we hit both of your solutions there?
Did, yes.
Perfect.
I'll jump in to piggyback off Charlie, and we discussed this last week as one of the solutions, but that being a lot of corporate environments, employees as they're onboarded will, commonly go through role playing and videos that are professionally produced, to really train employees or even seasoned, employees in the workplace on, how to handle different situations. And I think, especially now, it would be beneficial for one of our solutions to include the difference between being anti-racist and a racist. So I think there's a lot of room for education when it comes to, delivering a solution to each firm and industry wide that, could be played. I know here at, all firms, each major company has a training process, and I think this should be a course and videos that should be, shown to agents, whether they're, new to the industry or, have years of experience.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. And I just want to note someone who made a comment earlier when I was speaking. They said, should we get REBNY involved? I think that this is a good opportunity for us to get REBNY involved because really REBNY is out there. We pay our dues. They fight for us on all of these issues. These are very important issues to us. And they do have resources and they do have the bandwidth. So I think that maybe this is something that we should present as an opportunity and an idea to REBNY. And maybe REBNY can help us with their resources to produce these short little film, 15-second snippets of graphics. And, I think you make a really good point again about what is the difference between anti-racist and someone who's not racist, right? We're looking to create more anti-racist because anti-racist stand up against racism and racist acts. Those are the kind of people that we're looking for in the world and in our industry. So I think that
getting LIBOR involved.
What's that?
We also ought to think about getting LIBOR on Long Island and Queens involved.
Correct. Yeah.
I was-
And you guys have to tell us, because we're so used to, Rebney and our sort of, that's what people here in the city are using. But you guys have to tell us, and you're going to be our eyes and ears out there, whether you're on, a different state or a different coast, or whether you're out there on the island. You let us know, and we will disseminate that information to them as well. Thank you for that.
Talking about
I was
Queens.
gonna-
We're also talking about Queens. So that's New York City also,
No, of course. Yes, 100%.
I was
We're talking
gonna
about,
just jump in.
for the record, we're talking about the United States of America. That we're talking about everyone, everywhere, every town, every small little province, everything, everywhere, every inch, every nook, every cranny of the United States of America, everywhere.
I was just going to mention something really quickly with what Ellis said about, graphics and video. We could probably do something like a public media as ads. I feel like that would be a great way to kind of like reach all the different markets and all the different cities if we wanted to really think like globally. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I'm all about a global reach, and I'm all about, finding resources, because I find often it's great to have these, wonderful solutions that we come up with. But at the same time, I want to be realistic, because I don't want to just be a dreamer. I want to be a doer. So maybe there's somebody out there who knows someone who can help us do these graphics or get these ad buys. I think we just want to make sure that we're realistic and that we can actually achieve the solutions by properly implementing them over time.
Well, we could, with the PSA, it's really, I guess, as simple as just doing a video, right? And kind of talking and putting the information out there like that. It doesn't have to be like something so grand as like an actual ad, but just kind of like just a public service announcement. And we're talking about for housing, and we're kind of just as a community of brokers putting that together in a video form.
Yeah, and then also we have to remember the power of social media with each of us and all of our followers. And, with Frederick, who is supporting us in this effort as well. He's very excited by what we're doing. He's got 1.3 million followers on, just his Instagram platform alone. And he'd be more than happy to share anything that we can come up with. I just want to make sure that video is tight.
Yeah.
I want to make something really nice, and I want to make sure that it looks good and the message is, comes across the way that it deserves.
Absolutely.
John, we have a couple hands up. First is Victoria and Vatisha. Victoria?
Hey there. Are you able to hear me all right?
Yeah.
We hear you, Victoria.
Yeah, thank you. I'm in the Los Angeles area, and I'm listening today because I want to take some of our ideas, not just into the real estate community, but I'm part of a nonprofit group at a church food pantry, and we have a lot of people of color that come to the food pantry. So I'm looking for ideas to go in a lot of different directions. And one of the things when we talk about being able to show or have programs or have people come and speak, I think a lot of times a lot of us need to take our own self-assessment. It was really enlightening. I read one of Malcolm Gladwell's books, and there was a whole section about prejudice and people that didn't think that they had any types of racism or prejudices. And there's some test that was formulated by Columbia University, and it's a test that you take, and it makes you recognize things that you maybe didn't even recognize yourselves. And I think that maybe is something that we could implement amongst ourselves, maybe in intake or training or different things. I think that a lot of us walk around and think that we're not racist, or we don't want to be racist, or we want to fight racism. And then situations come up where our friends say, see, you need to look at that more. You need to address that yourself more. And that's just my 2 cents worth, but I really like where the group is going with this. And I don't know how I got on this email, but I'm really happy to be a part of this at this point. Thank you.
We are equally as happy that you joined. And by the way, you just very eloquently described a major point that we have been trying to make throughout this entire series. You just described what many people, oh, I'm not racist. I don't discriminate against Black people. I don't have any racist tendencies. Great. That's the first step to becoming anti-racist. Now take that up a notch, okay? By taking it up a notch is when you say, that I'm not racist, and I stand up against racism. I speak up against racist acts, because we all know, and I will admit myself, I in the past have actually borne witness to these racist acts. And I, because it didn't involve me specifically at the time, turned my head and I walked the other way because I thought that's not my business. I'm not gonna get involved. That's the old me. And the new me is an anti-racist. And we all have to promote anti-racism to all of our friends, to all of our colleagues, to all of our family members, because we need all Americans across this entire country to be anti-racist. And again, we are specifically talking about racism within the industry. So even if you don't go that broad, please, please start with your colleagues, because no more of this crap. No more of this stuff that we read from that Newsday investigation. No more of this stuff. No more of the steering. We are the gatekeepers of these fair housing laws as real estate brokers across the country. We have a ginormous responsibility, and we've got to start realizing that and taking charge of our own destiny. And we've got to start taking care of everyone. This stuff just can't go on anymore. So thank you very much. I'm not sure how you got on our list, but I'm happy that you did. And thank you for making that really beautiful point. Really appreciate that. Ellis, who was next?
Batisha Smith.
Hello, everyone. Please excuse the noise in the background, and I have a mask on, but I just wanted to make sure I joined the meeting. One of the things I wanted to suggest is starting from the younger generation, perhaps volunteering to go into middle schools via a Zoom meeting or high schools and talk about real estate. Get young people excited about it in communities that are lower income and middle income. People who don't think that they are in the running to be homeowners or to be in the real estate industry, whether it be developer, whether it be a real estate agent, and talk to them about the real estate industry. I mean, I'm sure some of their parents watch $1 Million Listing and they, are interested in what's going on in the real estate market, but they don't know who to talk to or who to ask. And having someone talk to them about it that looks like them or works with people that look like them is something that will motivate them to get into the real estate market and know that they have the opportunity and they have the right to be there. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, it's very well said, and it's something that we discussed last week, and I think that it's appropriate to discuss it this week under implementation. We said we really want to send a message to young people. I spoke to a reporter recently on this topic, and I said, how ridiculous is it that I, John Gomes, a biracial man, I'm the token Black person that's in the top 75 list of brokers across Manhattan? How ridiculous is that? There is definitely a systemic problem that exists here. And really, that's because the optics are not there for people of color to actually see people of color and identify with them and say, oh, that person's there, they made it, they can do that, I can do that too. So I know, and it's a very big part of my responsibility, and it's why I said before, my team, when you look at my team, you'll find a lot of color here, because I'm investing in a lot of younger agents who are agents of color and giving them an opportunity because I see that they've got it in them. because I want them to be the future stars of this industry. I want those individuals on my team to become part of the top 75 listed brokers, because I want them to be the ones that other people who are in a younger generation, whether they be in high school or whether they're at NYU studying to get into real estate or just taking their real estate license at a New York Real Estate Institute. I want them to look up and see those people, because I know at Eklund Gomes, we have a platform, and I want to use that platform in a productive way so that we can bring change to this industry. So I could not, and we as a committee could not agree more with your statement, and thank you for sharing that sentiment, because it's really a validation for us, because we just this morning were talking about how do we get the message across to younger people. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And do we have anyone else who's raised their hand, Ellis? Otherwise, we'll move on to Nadia to share her next solution.
Let's hop to Kadeen real quick. Kadeen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. And thank you for all you're doing in this forum. I appreciate it. I just wanted to suggest that, and I don't know if it has come up before, because this is my first time. I'm also from California. Then maybe you invite smaller groups to come together and meet, where it's like 3 or 4 people, because socially, some people have no problem sharing in a big group, but some people might share better in a small group. And that's how we get diversity of views and put it all in the pot, so that we don't just have a few people who are comfortable in a big forum bringing suggestions, but we get more suggestions out of it, if that makes sense.
Yes, I agree. And I do think that we will start getting together in these smaller groups as long as we socially distance and we take all the necessary precautions. Absolutely. It's a great idea and a good way to implement. Sometimes you have too many people and it's hard to really, accomplish anything. But often I find that when I'm in smaller groups, you can take things off in little bite-sized pieces and chew on them and actually get more done than you would be able to in a large group. So point made and well taken.
Okay.
Done. Let's hop back to the committee.
Okay, so we're going to have Nadia. Why don't you talk about the next solution?
So my solution is just doubling down on what I mentioned last week, supporting Black owned, making a conscious effort of buying Black. But I wanted it to be able, since this is a heavy real estate panel, I wanted to, one, just have this kind of reflect how we do our business, and also just give the reasoning of why I'm so passionate about this, and kind of explaining why supporting Black is not in no way punishing major corporations or punishing other owned businesses. So there's 3 reasons I have, and one of them is that buying Black is closing the racial wealth gap. We spoke earlier in the history portion of this about how historical deeds and redlining and blockbusting happened to affect the Black community. Today, the median wealth for white families is about 12 times that for Blacks. And even more concerning is that they predict that in 2053, the median wealth for Black families is projected to fall to 0. So small businesses and entrepreneurs have long time been wealth builders in our society. And by supporting more Black owned businesses, we can create more opportunities for meaningful savings, property ownership, credit building, and generational wealth. My second reason is that it strengthens local economies and it fosters job creations. So supporting Black owned businesses helps not just the business, but the entire communities at the center of the current demonstrations that we're seeing. So 9 times out of 10, Black owned businesses are making sure that people of color are employed as well. So think of that. 48% of small businesses purchases are recirculated locally. So compared to only 14% of what's circulated by chain stores. So as much as we give to charities and we say that we're going to give, donate to, say it again. Somebody's adorable baby is crying. Put it on mute. So yeah, as much as we give to charities, we got to also think about giving back to these entrepreneurial endeavors and see how they directly impact the communities. And lastly, it celebrates the culture that serves the communities. So some Black-owned businesses are created to bring access to services specific to the community's needs. For example, instead of waiting for Starbucks to open, we may have a locally owned coffee shop with Wi-Fi servicing the community, and that neighborhood thrives. So I want to bring Susie into this, and I want to also talk about the 15% pledge. Black people in the US make up nearly 15% of the population. So there's been a call for retailers to commit a minimum of 15% of their shelf to Black-owned businesses. Today, we want to call on our real estate colleagues to make a conscious effort that your vendor list also reflects this. So the question I have for everybody is this possible and can we do more? Now, I have, which I'm willing to circulate to anyone who wants it, I have a vendor list, not just vendors like floor planners, lawyers, but also like for gift giving, candle companies, winemakers, clothing brands. So we just want to know like how other people look at it and committing to this, just having that diversity reflected in your list of who services your business.
Yeah, and I think too, to jump on what Nadia's saying, and I see Tina's on from last week, and you mentioned that Compass is doing this. So for anyone who doesn't know me, I run operations for Eklund Gomes, and kind of to tag on what Victoria said earlier, this is really the time where we all need to look in the mirror. So I've recently been looking through our vendor lists because it's just something I never really thought about before. And, you know, we do work with a lot of white men. So Nadia and I are going to be working together, and I will make that commitment for our team at the very least, that we will be adding some Black, you know, hopefully many Black-owned businesses to our vendor lists, to any, with closing gifts, kind of any and everything. And if you guys, at least in the New York, LA, or Miami markets, have anyone to recommend, would love if you can send those over to us.
I love this idea so much. And by the way, it is so incredibly easy to implement because I think, Nadia, we have everyone's contact information of all of the hundreds and hundreds of people that have registered and actually participated on our weekly series. So we could send that list of vendors that you have, and then maybe others will share their own list, and we will take the responsibility to collate those lists so that we can share those lists with everybody, and we can just keep updating them, because it's my hope that what will happen over time, because I think about it, I have not worked with any Black photographers. I don't have any Black staging companies that I work with. It's kind of weird, but it's also weird that I never thought about this before. I just sort of accepted it for what it was and didn't really give it any consideration. I hope that what happens is we distribute this list, we start supporting these businesses grow, and as a result, they inspire other Black entrepreneurs to come into our industry as well, because they will see that they are welcome, because that's the point. All are welcome. So this is such an easy way to implement. And I don't even think you guys on this call realize how powerful the ripple effects of our actions will be. Just pretty amazing. I can't believe that I myself have just never, ever considered this before. So thank you guys for putting this list together.
Yeah, and to add to that, what I would say, and the reason for even building the list, is it's not a convenient endeavor. It's not something, you know, it's difficult to go on Amazon, and sometimes when you think about, oh, now I have to do so much just to find this person, and it's not going to come to me exactly when I want it. But we have to also, you know, we have to put in mind that sometimes, think about just candles. Like there was a candle maker that I'm crazy about, and I've recommended her to everyone. Her shipping time is about 10 to 14 days. Yes, you could probably go on Amazon and get another candle next day delivery, right? But that company may have more resources than her. That all the things that lead back to the history that we gave you guys a few weeks ago. So, but I say to everyone, instead of us buying, you know, I have nothing against, I love Voluspa candles, but instead of us paying $30 for a Voluspa candle, why not do it from a candle maker that we know is going to, you know, recirculate, and we could help this business grow. So it's not convenient, and that's the reason why I have the list. And the list that I have so far is all people that I've worked with directly and have been directly referred to me. So it gives you not just convenience, but also confidence. So I'm more than willing to share your list, build your list, but like my list is it's this little gift of love that I have for people that I've worked with. Some of them are my clients as well. So I'll share it with whoever wants it.
Nadia, can you talk about the 15%? Where does that come from?
So there's a 15% pledge, and you know, you could Google it on 15percentpledge.org. And basically, the one store that I know that did take the pledge that I could talk about is that we all know is Sephora, and also Rent the Runway. So they have all these designers that Rent the Runway. So Sephora has all the makeup brands, and they realized that they probably only had like 3% of Black-owned businesses. And there's a plethora. There's enough more for them to reflect the change. So in order for us to say that we're really focused on diversity and inclusion, our shelves, or the stores, the retailers' shelves, and even with us, our offices, our vendor contact list should reflect the population. So we all have to kind of like ask ourselves, are we really making a conscious effort? Why?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So 15% comes from Blacks, are almost 15% of the population, yeah. I believe. We talked about it. Yes, okay, so that's why it's a 15% pledge.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, make 15% of whatever you spend every day, make sure you try to make that toward Black-owned businesses, because they represent 15% of our country. I get it. Well, that makes sense. That's fair. That's a good consideration.
I think so.
Before we move on to the next topic, I just want to quickly jump on Nadia's point and why it is critically important to support Black-owned businesses. If you actually look, you know, as everyone knows, COVID has, you know, affected everyone. You have high unemployment, you have severe joblessness, hunger throughout the country. If you look at who's received a payment protection program loan, PPP, less than 2% of Black-owned businesses have actually received those loans, which goes back really to the historical disenfranchisement of Blacks in our country, unfortunately. And when you look at it, you know, Black people tend to not have those commercial banking relationships as some of the larger businesses do. So just to double up on that point, this is one of the many reasons why it's so critically important to support Black businesses, particularly in an era like this where you have people struggling.
Thank you, Stephen. Susie, I think you should go up next.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my implementation is a little bit more of a question for you all. And it's just something that I've taken away from all of these weeks of research in the history and everything. It's something that I think keeps coming up over and over again is we have these fair housing laws. You know, we have different regulations that get passed, and then where's the accountability and where's the enforcement? So as I love all of these ideas we're hearing, and I think we have a few more really exciting ones coming ahead in this conversation, I'll just ask you all to think about how do you think we can hold people accountable for being anti-racist and for upholding, you know, these standards of equality that we've been talking about for all of these weeks?
Wow, so that's a good question, right? how do we hold people accountable for all of these solutions that we've come up with? Great that we have solutions and we're going to implement them in various ways, but how do we hold people accountable? Well, I guess one of the ways that we're holding people accountable is, look, there's a hotline. Eklund Gomes is going to sponsor a hotline. And if people are reported, then I guess we on this committee are holding people accountable, because if they are reported by somebody leaving a message on our hotline number and we report that to the inspector general or someone in the governor's office, then those people are going to have to answer to the governor's office. And in essence, that means that we on this committee have taken charge and we ourselves are holding them accountable, right? It's like, we can't always rely on everyone to be accountable on their own, because if that were the case, then we wouldn't be having this Zoom 7 weeks later to discuss racism within our industry. So I guess the way that I see it is, we have to hold people accountable.
Yeah, we need to hold each other accountable, because we don't want this. What we never wanted was, we never wanted this to become a 1 hour in your week and you just move on with your life. So we're really hoping to keep people engaged and we're hoping that we made some impact in at least giving you additional knowledge or insight to some of the things we practice. I would really like to hear from, I know we had somebody from the Brooklyn MLS and another Queens agent, which I know is working, it's like night and day from Rebney. So I kind of want some insight. I think that is Alan Mann.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I really think what John was talking about is the answer. You can't allow it to cross your eyes without calling it out. I think all of us have to be our own cops, okay? You can't allow racism or discrimination to pass your eyes without saying something. It's that simple. It's going to come down to people. And it all depends on how you want to live your life, right? If you allow it to go, if you allow it to pass, you're approving it.
Right.
Yeah, Alan, I think that's right. You know, we kind of reveal who we are when the spotlight isn't on. So I think a lot of this will, you know, it's going to be in private conversation. We're not going to necessarily know who's holding who accountable. So I really think it comes down to, you know, as you said, how we want to live our lives. And, you know, I'm not sure that's necessarily something we can hold someone accountable for, but, you know, we would ask that people kind of acknowledge that we all have blind spots and kind of just take it from there. It's a continuous conversation within ourselves.
Oh, and along the way, you may lose a friend here or there. It's a risk you take.
Well,
I've lost some friends that I've had 30 and 40 years because I've called them out on their racism.
Well, unfortunately, I can relate to that, having gone through the course of this series, but I don't think we have enough time for that, so I'll kind of just leave it there.
But I commend you for that, Alan. I commend you for your actions, and thank you for sharing that. Maybe we'll move on now to Janet and Stephen.
Yes, so just to kind of elaborate, Batisha earlier mentioned about education and going into low to middle income neighborhoods and communities and kind of educating people. To elaborate on that a little bit more, we were thinking, you know, obviously going to some of the real estate schools in New York, as well as, you know, particularly HBCUs. I think Stephen came up with that great idea. I you know, graduated from an HBCU. So it's definitely something that's near to me. And mentorship, I think, is something that's very important, especially for our younger generation. So I'll let Stephen kind of touch on that a little bit more about internship, but I think educating people and really just kind of giving them the guidance so that they're ready for it when they actually kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, Janet, I think that's completely spot on. I mean, you know, last week I talked a little bit about, you know, visibility and how some younger people might be discouraged from entering the industry because they don't see themselves reflected in it. So where does this start? It starts very young. So I would, you know, to Letitia's point, I would say, you know, in terms of elementary and middle school, I know that might be a little young, but, you know, really looking at mentorship and implementing it that way, whether it's a high school career day. And, you know, I'll use New York as an example for college, but, you know, these days, your coveted internship is like the biggest thing you can do in college. That junior year going into senior year, your big internship. In New York, the big thing is to get a finance internship and you live in NYU housing or Columbia housing. Why don't we make real estate something that people aspire to intern in, similar to other industries, and actually reach out to HBCUs, reach out to NYU programs for folks who might not see themselves in our industry and who've been historically disenfranchised. I think it's really important, and I think the work really does start there to really start to diversify our industry.
And we can really just, you know, tackle the issue that we have now with fair housing and discrimination early by doing this, you know, and really having that conversation with the students that are coming into this.
Right.
I just think that's very important.
You know, something we haven't really talked about, and I kind of just I'll put this to the audience in the last several minutes that we have left, but to the existing agents of color, if you can think of any barriers that you face in the industry, and whether you have any ideas on, you know, implementing particular changes that can really improve your own personal business. I guess one idea I kind of was mulling with, and I think there are actually a couple organizations out there where you have cross-country or cross-market referrals to really build up your business and your brand. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think not only do we want to bring new representation into the industry, we also want to not neglect the struggles that current agents of color and Black agents face in trying to diversify where they sell, or you know, I know we've had these conversations, and I know it's a little late to bring this up now, given we only have a couple minutes, but I think it's an interesting conversation to have that we can perhaps continue to have even after this series ends.
Yeah, and ideas on what to talk about when we are approaching these different institutes and institutions, and you know, kind of giving them that education.
Right, and the last thing that I'll kind of touch on is kind of rewinding back to Charlie's point about diversity and inclusion. You know, as we see in many industries and many corporate structures, there tends to not be a lot of diversity on executive teams. So we understand the era that we're currently living in right now, where people are losing their jobs. But I do think that it's critically important that brokerages in particular do retain consultants who can address diversity, inclusion, and particularly fair housing, just so, you know, not to harp on this point, but we really do turn it into a normalized way of conducting business rather than just a fleeting and passing moment.
Exactly.
Well, you guys, thank you guys so much for that. I'm going to have to wrap things up because we're coming into our last 2 minutes. I do want to make a public announcement for the first time. We here at the Eklund Gomes Black Lives Matter Committee, as I said at the beginning, are saddened really that this is our 7th and final episode of this series, which we've all learned a tremendous amount from. We have concluded this morning that we can't finish. We cannot just stop here. And we realized that this Black Lives Matter committee has evolved into what we are now going to call the Inclusivity Alliance. This is going to be an alliance that all real estate brokers across the country are going to be invited to participate in. We are going to promote exactly the topics that we have been discussing for the past 7 weeks. We're going to expand upon those topics, and we're going to make it much, much broader. We are looking for inclusivity for all within this industry. We want to encourage all people to feel that they are included, and we want to celebrate all of our differences, and we want this to be an alliance that is going to spread the word that we have been really just starting to scratch the surface on for the past 7 weeks. I'm so glad to see all the comments coming across because we really like that Inclusivity Alliance name as well. You will all be given an opportunity to participate. We're going to continue to have more of these talks. We will stay in touch with all of you. I can tell you that the first goal, our first task at this Inclusivity Alliance is going to take all of the information that we have just concluded in today's session on implementing all of the solutions that we have come up with over the past 7-week period, and we're going to disseminate all of this information to all of what I call the opinion leaders, all of the executives, all of the decision makers, all of the team managers, all small, medium, and large firms across the entire United States of America. And we're going to put this together in a digital toolkit so that we can share with them. In addition, we're going to have all of these amazing speakers, and we're going to have more Zoom meetings, and we're going to have in-person meetings eventually. But we are so thrilled that you guys have joined us on this journey. It is the end, but it's really the beginning of a new. Thank you so much for all of your love. Thank you for your open hearts. Thank you for your open minds. Thank you for your love. Please remember, we're looking to build anti-racist of the world. Spread the world with love. Spread the world with our message. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this with us. Thank you to my amazing committee. I love you guys so much. This is just the beginning for you guys, for all of us. Thank you. Much love from New York.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
so much. Thank you.
Great work, guys. Great work.
Thank you, John.
Fantastic.
Bravo.
Terrific.
Keep
Thank
it going.
you.
Great.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Great work.
Congrats.
Give me
Great
hope.
job. Congrats.
Great
Exactly.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.